Chapter 1441. After dismissing everyone, Emolien waited for his wifey in a corner of Brocade Garden. He knew that Jojo and his senior sister should have a lot to talk about after reuniting after a long time, so he was not in a hurry. However, he flung off a transparent chain on his wrist and sighed. "Give me 1 more month." Yuo was a smart child. In these 2 months, he had continuously arranged all kinds of political affairs for him. Although he did not say anything, this child had probably already guessed his objective. He would leave, but not right now. However, this heavenly law was very annoying and wanted to drag him away from time to time. He reckoned that the seal inside his body would not last another month. Sigh, he had to continue holding on even if he couldn't. Emolien abruptly turned his head, and without even looking, he directly kicked out. "Ah!" After letting out a delicate cry of surprise, Commandery Princess Ian fell to the ground in resentment. The sharp pebbles on the ground had scratched out faint bloody marks on her hands. "Your Highness." Commandery Princess Ian's tears came on a whim. Unfortunately, other than his wifey, any other woman's tears were worthless in the Crown Prince's eyes. Commandery Princess Ian was wearing a peach-pink chiffon that could barely conceal her beautiful figure. She knelt on the ground with a tear-stained face and resentful eyes. Why was that man still indifferent towards her even though she had lowered her status and pride to throw herself at him? She had no more time. She was going to marry into the vassal king of Nan's estate the day after tomorrow, but she was unwilling. She was also completely helpless, which was why she took the risk in desperation to get close to this man who was as handsome as a god. She wanted to become his, even if it was as a beloved concubine. Right now, her entire body was covered in that kind of drug. She wanted him to fiercely possess her. She had already thrown caution to the wind and was already shameless. She only wanted to become His Highness the Crown Prince's woman, but why? Why was His Highness the Crown Prince still so disdainful towards her even at a time like this? Could it be that she was not beautiful? If it was any other man present today, they would not be able to restrain themselves from pouncing on her after seeing her attire that was as beautiful as peaches and plums. But only His Highness, that heartless and callous His Highness. If she's so unbearably lonely, then I'll send her to consummate her marriage with the vassal prince of Nan in advance. The Crown Prince brushed off the white powder on his sleeves. After some thought, he tore off a piece of his sleeve and threw it on the ground. "Yes, Your Highness." Huifeng immediately walked up nimbly and picked up Commandery Princess En. No. When Commandery Princess En heard the man's heartless words, her entire body started trembling. Her eyes contracted in horror as she shook her head repeatedly and screamed. She didn't want to become the vassal prince of Nan's woman. Although the vassal prince of Nan was considered handsome and the vassal prince of Nan's estate was considered influential, the vassal prince of Nan, Cho Fu, couldn't even compare to a single finger of His Highness the Crown Prince. She, Commandery Princess En, had sworn to become the most honorable woman in the world. She could not let the vassal prince of Nan ruin her like this. Don't. Commandery Princess En shrieked in horror, but Huifeng directly knocked her unconscious with a karate chop. After picking up this pretentious woman, Huifeng turned around and jumped onto the roof. By the time Arbor arrived, this farce had already completely ended. There was only a faint smell of aphrodisiac left in the air. Chapter 1442. What's that smelly smell? The little one puffed up her cheeks and grumbled unhappily. She bounced over to Crown Prince's side. The little Crown Princess wrapped her arms around his waist and burrowed her head into his embrace. The Crown Prince's heart was about to be melted by her. He hugged her back and cried out in grievance, Chow, when you weren't here just now, a female scoundrel came over and wanted to drug me, but I kicked her away." Arbor looked up at him, her eyes round and bright. "Where is she?" She was going to kill her. She could tell that this drug wasn't anything good just by smelling it. With such strong effects, it wasn't good for the body. She hurriedly fanned her hands in front of Crown Prince to help him get rid of the smell of the drug. "Does it hurt?" "It hurts. My whole body is burning up." Crown Prince took the opportunity to rub against the little one. What should I do, Jojo? Aba rolled her eyes and pushed his handsome face away. Stop pretending. You have the drug in your body. Unless it's a neurotoxin like the devil's grass, all other drugs won't work on you. Burning up? Big Liar still wants to trick Jojo. Moreover, as his drug improves, neurotoxins like the devil's grass won't be able to do anything to him in a while. Sigh, my wife is too smart. I can't fool her. Emolien looked at her helplessly. Jojo, have you finished talking to your senior? Aba looked at him with bright eyes. Emolien, there's something I need to tell you. Okay. Let's talk on the way. Crown Prince Mo grasped her soft, petite hand and pulled her onto the royal carriage, heading straight for the Eastern Palace. Aba thought for a moment and said, Emolien, the normal passage between the 6 prefectures and the lower star sector will open at the beginning of July, right? Emolien was startled when he heard this, and then he nodded. Are you planning to go to the 6 prefectures continent? Aba nodded her head vigorously. Whether it was for public or private reasons, she had to find the Shuntian prefecture's prefecture lord to settle accounts. She had to find him to settle the grudges between her past life and this one. All right. Emolien nodded without hesitation. Since the little one had already made her decision, he would support her unconditionally. Plus, with her talent of 3 out of 5, going to the 6 prefectures to cultivate would only be beneficial to her. If it's a normal passageway, as long as one's profound strength is at the 13th level or above, and is able to sense even a trace of the 5 spirits' power, they will be able to go up. Emolien said with a smile. You've already met the requirements, so it won't be difficult for you to go up. At that time, the normal passageway will open above our Mo Kingdom capital. The 3,000 steps that appeared were called the Stairway to Heaven. You just have to climb up. For someone like you who already possesses the power of the 5 spirits, this is not difficult at all. Aba looked at him with bright eyes and shrank into his arms. Let's go together? Or do you need to take care of some matters before coming to find me? The tiny Northern Prince Mo couldn't keep Northern Prince Mo. With his cultivation, he definitely couldn't stay here for long. Rather than letting heavenly law drag him away, he might as well obediently go up himself. Prince Mo's breathing stopped slightly. He gazed at his little wife in his arms tenderly and said, Jojo, there's something I must tell you as well. Speak. I. Just as the words were about to come out of his mouth, Prince Mo couldn't help but chuckle as he gazed at her large, bright, curious eyes. He lifted his arms and hugged her, saying, It's fine, I'll go with you. I'll accompany you wherever you go. There was still a 4th update at night, so it would probably be rather late. Chapter 1443. Boom. A white light flitted across the horizon, turning the dark night into day in a split second. Why is there thunder all of a sudden? Aba looked up at the sky in bewilderment. Prince Mo looked up at the pitch-black night before lowering his gaze and squeezing Aba's small hand silently. Jojo. I will always be by your side. Emolien patted her head. Okay. Aba nodded. She hugged his arm and leaned against him, squinting her eyes as she gazed at the stars in the distance. In this lifetime, my life will no longer be controlled by others. Aba muttered to herself as she hugged his arm. She tilted her head and rested her head on it, looking like she had fallen asleep as the carriage moved slowly. Emolien turned to look at her before simply pulling her into his arms and adjusting her into a comfortable sleeping position. It was a quiet night. Under the stillness of the night, the towering palace walls in the distance were dimly illuminated by the dusky palace lanterns. The carriage wheels rolled across the corridor paved with yellow marble, exiting Splendid Garden and heading for the Eastern Palace. The 2 people's figures drew out 2 oblique shadows on the ground. The starlight shone, stacking together in a sticky manner. Lord Arthur's section break, the vassal king of Nan's estate. It was late at night. Inside vassal Prince Cho Fu's room, it was currently the time of spring. Just now, someone had thrown Commandery Princess Ian inside from outside the window, giving Cho Fu a false alarm. When he chased after her, she had already disappeared without a trace. However, he saw that the beauty's clothes were half exposed under the lamplight. She was incomparably beautiful, and most importantly, she had even thrown herself into his arms. In a moment of impulsiveness, Cho Fu carried this woman, who would be marrying into the vassal king's estate the day after tomorrow, into the back room. In any case, she was the one who initiated it, and they were about to get married, so Cho Fu didn't care that much. Everything was fine at first, right? The two of them hugged each other and rolled around in bed. It was nothing much. Most importantly, that Commandery Princess Ian actually called out the words, "Your Highness the Crown Prince," when the vassal prince of Anan was very pleased. It was as if a bucket of ice water had been poured on young Master Chow's 80 feet tall fire. F***ck. He had spent so much effort in the middle of the night, and this woman still thought that the person she had slept with was the crown prince? This was intolerable. No man would be able to tolerate this. There was a F***king green grassland above him, and the horses were galloping. Vassal Prince Cho immediately slapped the dazed Commandery Princess Ian awake. Unexpectedly, after the princess woke up, she was even worse off. When the princess discovered that her virginity, which she had preserved for 17 to 18 years and wanted to offer to the person she admired, had been ruined by this vassal prince of Anan, it was over. The princess let out a mournful shriek that was comparable to a nightingale's mournful wail, and it immediately jolted everyone in the vassal prince's courtyard awake from their sweet dreams. The princess immediately pounded the vassal prince of Anan's chest with her small fists as if she had gone mad. She even kicked him off the bed, throwing a tantrum. The vassal prince of Anan's flock of concubines even thought that a thief had broken into the vassal prince's room. When they barged in after knocking on the door, they saw this strange scene. The vassal prince had fallen naked on the ground, and he was currently curled up with his back arched. He was clutching his thing, and the veins on his forehead were bulging from the pain. Meanwhile, that naked whatever Commandery Princess was currently kneeling on the bed. When she saw so many women rushing in, she immediately let out another hoarse shriek. Chapter 1444. This shrill scream immediately attracted a large number of royal guards from outside the courtyard. The vassal prince of Anan's face had turned green from anger. He pointed shakily at the door and shrieked, "Close the door, close the door." Slap. The concubines quickly closed the door for the vassal prince. The vassal prince stood up stark naked. His entire body was trembling from the pain, and he was so angry that he had lost all face. He walked up to the Commandery Princess and roared, "Ian! Blurg!" Commandery Princess Ian immediately spat out a mouthful of filth. It all landed on the vassal prince of Anan's face. The group of concubines looked at each other in bewilderment. Ian! The vassal prince of Anan was nearly disgusted to death. He wiped his face, but he still felt that his hands and body were emitting a foul stench. The vassal prince let out a furious roar and took out an ox whip from his inner world with a flip of his hand. He then swung it directly at Commandery Princess Ian's naked body. Ah! Commandery Princess Ian screamed as she dodged. She suddenly lunged forward like a madwoman and grabbed the vassal prince's head, biting at his chin. Ow! The vassal prince screamed in pain. Who the hell knew how miserable he was today? Did this Ian go crazy? She wasn't the one throwing herself at him. She was the one who took the initiative to invite him to roll in the sheets, all right? What was wrong with her now? She was going back on her word after doing it. As the two people overlapped, the vassal prince lost his balance and fell backward, causing Ian to sit heavily on his abdomen. Subsequently, the vassal prince's expression changed. His eyebrows were crooked as he bared his teeth and screamed, "Ow!" It felt like that thing was about to be crushed. Go to hell. The naked Commandery Princess Ian abruptly punched the vassal prince's left eye heavily. The vassal prince fell backward in response, and the back of his head smashed heavily onto the floor tiles with a thump, Cough, cough. Arbor didn't even know when he returned to the Eastern Palace last night. When he woke up, Arbor lowered his head and looked at himself. He was nestled in the big bed made of agar wood, clean and tidy. Did little M.O. secretly change her clothes yesterday? Miss, you're awake now. Peony smiled as she lifted the curtain and walked in. You slept well last night, didn't you? It's okay, Arbor said embarrassedly, looking around. Where's Emolien? His Highness has been teaching the 12th Prince how to handle government affairs these days. Both of them are probably still in the Great King's imperial study. Oh. Arbor nodded and stole a glance at Xiao Yao. He coughed softly and said, Xiao Yao, when did I come back yesterday? MHM, about 1 o'clock in the morning. Xiao Yao walked up with the clothes in her hands with a chuckle. However, before she could get close to the bed, the clothes in her hands had already been taken away. When she looked back, she saw that maid Hai Tang walking up methodically and reaching out to help her miss get up. Yet Xiao Mu rolled over and sat up, jumping off the bed with a stomp of her legs and running to the side. Hai Tang quickly chased after her with the clothes and advised seriously, Crown Princess, you have to get used to Hai Tong's existence. In a few days, Xiao Yao will be going back to prepare for her wedding. His Highness the Crown Prince instructed Hai Tang to do everything personally in the future and not let the Crown Princess get involved if she can help it. Chapter 1445. Arbor. Thank God I'm not a useless person. Xiao Yao was also behind him and she couldn't help but twitch her lips. His Highness must be out of his mind to actually send Hai Tang to the Crown Princess's side. Then you can just send Peony, Duwan or Camellia and Osmanthus over. Crown Princess, you can't touch this. Hai Tang, come here. Crown Princess, don't touch that. Hai Tang, come here. Crown Princess, put it down. Crown Princess, don't. The young Crown Prince consort pattered out the door and slammed the door of the Eastern Palace's bedchamber with a loud bang, with a deafening sound. Xiao Yao pursed her lips speechlessly. As soon as she turned around, she saw Hai Tang glaring at her with an honest and wooden expression. Big Sister Xiao Yao, His Highness has instructed you to take your leave starting in 3 days, right? Why aren't you leaving? Xiao Yao. Sister Xiao Yao, this is His Highness's order. Oh. Can you not always add words like you and oh when you're talking? It made her subconsciously and inexplicably add these 2 words. Xiao Yao wiped her sweat and looked at her worriedly. Suddenly, she had a flash of inspiration and said, His Highness didn't send you to the Crown Princess's side on purpose, did he? The Crown Prince couldn't be thinking of using the wooden and somewhat hilarious Hai Tang to amuse the Crown Princess every day, right? Xiao Yao's lips twitched speechlessly. The more she thought about it, the more likely it was. How would I know? Xiao Yao's outstretched hand hung down speechlessly. She really wanted to ask Hai Tang if she could stop adding suffixes at the end of every sentence. Someone told me that it's more cordial to talk like this. Xiao Yao's head was full of black lines. Arbor was annoyed to death by this Hai Tang. He walked all the way out of the door. She entered the small garden from outside the palace walls and strolled for a short while before she saw 2 plump eunuchs leading the Aikido tribe's young master ACI and his group. They were currently walking towards her. When Arbor saw this, he immediately turned around and left. She just came out to relax. There was no need for her to argue with a group of people. However, in Assie's eyes, her action of turning around and running away looked like she had a guilty conscience. He immediately shouted, Stop right there. Arbor didn't listen to his nonsense and ran away without a trace. Yas was so angry that smoke almost came out of his head. This little guy was simply too detestable. Big brother Yas, why did you call her? Akia couldn't hide the unbearable jealousy in her eyes. She wasn't stupid. She could see that there was an unusual flame leaping in Yas's eyes toward that little slut, and she especially wanted to extinguish these 2 flames that were slowly rising. Don't talk nonsense. ACI glared at her coldly. Then, his figure flashed and chased after Arbor. Akir angrily stomped her feet. Big brother Ollie, look at him. Ollie also had a displeased expression on his face. Big brother was too concerned about this northern prince consort Mo. Arbor ran very far away in one breath before stopping. She reached out and took out a teleportation talisman. When she thought about it, this teleportation talisman wasn't reliable. Who knew where it would teleport her? Forget it, let's just leave it at that. Yes, that bull probably wouldn't shamelessly follow me with his manly tone. The little stoic withdrew her small feet and circled around to another garden, planning to stroll around casually. However, she saw two dejected little royal maids walking towards her. One of them was holding a pot of wilted begonia. Chapter 1446. Sigh, what a pity. Nanny Feng even summoned the famous gardeners among the people into the palace. But this jasper begonia still can't be saved. Sigh. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager is going to be in a bad mood. We should be more careful these few days. Nanny Feng told us to throw this pot of flowers far away. This place is far enough, right? Sigh, throw it away, throw it away. The two of them put down the pot of jasper begonia and walked away with their heads drooping and sighing. Arbor ran to the jasper begonia and looked at it carefully. Suddenly, she reached out a small jade-white hand and covered the withered and curled leaves at the top of the begonia. In just a moment, the leaves seemed to have been reborn. They unfolded and turned from yellow to emerald green. Every tender leaf emerged from the stem of the flower. Suddenly, a flower bud emerged from under the emerald green leaves, followed by a second, a third. Several flower buds rolled into a ball and bloomed in unison. ACI, who followed behind, stared blankly at the small figure with her back facing him. At this moment, he only saw a patch of green blooming in front of his eyes. The light green begonia flowers intertwined with the dark green leaves, creating a visual feast. Arbor retracted her small hand and tilted her head to look at the jasper begonia that was blooming in high spirits. She reached out and hugged it in her arms. Send it back to grandmother. The little fellow made up her mind. She turned around and was about to head to the Longevity Palace when she almost bumped into ACI, who was walking quickly over. What are you doing? Darling Chow pursed her lips, looking like she didn't want to see him, and took a step back. Assie's pupils constricted slightly. He saw that the little girl was wearing a seaweed blue dress and holding a pot of blooming begonia flowers. However, her snow-white face was not inferior to the pot of begonia flowers she was holding. Are you deaf? I told you to stop, but the more I told you to, the faster you ran? ACI quickly averted his gaze and bellowed at Xiao Mu in humiliation. You're purposely pretending that you didn't hear me calling you, right? Arbor threw him a cold look. Excuse me. You haven't answered my question. ACI reached out angrily, wanting to grab her wrist. However, Xiao Mu stomped her leg over, ruthlessly kicking his black boot. Shut up. Who had the time to talk nonsense with this person? Yas laughed instead of getting angry. Do you really think that no one can control you? After saying that, he reached out to grab Arbor. Arbor only felt a strong and powerful force rushing towards him. He was slightly startled and dodged to the side, a trace of anger appearing in his eyes. Originally, she didn't want to argue with this person, but he insisted on finding trouble with her. Since that was the case, then, train him. Arbor simply reached out and stored the jasper begonia into his inner world. He summoned the pharaoh from his conscious and leaped into the air to strike Yas's head. You woman! You're still coming? This scene evoked a strong sense of familiarity in Yas's heart. Bastard! ACI met the attack with a mystic energy palm strike, but it was instantly neutralized by the little stoic's ferrule. When the two mystic energies collided, considerable energy ripples rose and fell in the small garden. Arbor reached out to press down a defensive boundary, which protected the nearby plants from harm. A flame as thick as a wrist suddenly sprayed out from the ferrule and burned toward Assie's chest without warning. It's over. Time to wake up. Chapter 1447. This was probably Auber's smoothest usage of wood spirits to date. With a wave of her small hand, a dozen or so wooden vines shot out from her sleeves. They snaked forward like a dozen whips, lashing out at ACI at the same time. ACI had to dodge the fiery lines from the ferrule on one hand and evade the entanglement of the wooden vines on the other. This caused his movements to slow down a bit. Auber took advantage of this opening and quickly summoned the startled swan dagger from her conscious. She suddenly aimed at Assie's chest and stabbed. Yas quickly dodged, barely avoiding the shockingly fast attack. However, the startled swan dagger was too fast. Even though he dodged quickly, the trace of mystic energy on the startled swan dagger had already cut open Assie's heavy clothes and left a faint cut on his chest. Yas glanced down. When he raised his head again, there was a trace of a sneer between his proud brows. "What? You want to cut open my clothes and admire my body? If that's the case, you should have said so earlier." Auber only thought that this person was sick, and quite sick at that. With a raise of her hand, a dozen or so vines shot out from her sleeves and wrapped around Assie's legs. ACI narrowed his eyes and suddenly stomped on the ground. The earth beneath his feet immediately roiled, erecting 3 earthen walls in the blink of an eye. He forced Auber into the earthen walls and suddenly reached out to grab Auber's shoulder. Auber couldn't help but fly into a rage. She threw a backhanded punch at one of the earthen walls. This punch contained no less than 500 kilograms of force. It directly caused the earthen wall to crack a few times and the layer of earth to rustle and fall. It was at this moment that Assie's fingers were about to touch her wrist. Auber kicked his hand away with a flying kick. She glared at him coldly, her almond eyes blazing with fire. She suddenly activated the teleportation talisman and her figure instantly disappeared from Assie's side. ACI was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly spread out his consciousness to sense where she was. He couldn't help but be shocked when he saw that the little fellow's figure had actually moved several hundred meters away. However, this short distance was not enough to stop him from quickly catching up. After Auber threw out the 3 teleportation talismans, he discovered a fatal problem. If she was fighting with an enemy and the enemy's speed was extremely fast, then this teleportation talisman would only be able to solve the problem for a moment and would not be able to completely get her out of danger. That was because the teleportation talisman only had a range of 1,000 meters. Although it could move infinitely, it had no sense of direction. There was no guarantee that it would move out and then move back. When Yas caught up again, he saw the little girl in blue standing along the towering palace wall, staring at him with cold, unblinking eyes. Assie's handsome face darkened as he sneered, "Run. Why aren't you running anymore? I thought you could run really fast." Crack. Yas suddenly felt a slight wind behind his head. His entire body tensed as he abruptly shifted to the side. However, it was too late. A metallic fist had already landed on his back as fast as the wind. ACI grunted and turned his head in a daze. He subconsciously met the golem's icy fist. Ah! After a hoarse eagle cry, a sharp eagle king swooped down from the sky and grabbed the golem's head. However, the golem didn't care about the eagle claw at all and directly threw a punch at ACI. Bang! Chapter 1448. Assie's body swayed slightly, and he couldn't help but curse inwardly that he had almost fallen into the hands of a golem again. That golem was too strange. Not only were its movements smooth, but it also seemed to have unparalleled thinking ability and could come up with a sneaky move from time to make him suffer. Auber stood on the side and watched Big Treasure and Assie's exchange. His figure suddenly moved, and an icicle flew through the air toward Assie's handsome face. ACI, who was dealing with the golem, was slightly startled and couldn't help but be flustered. As he dodged, that icicle cut Assie's arm again. Auber creased her brows, seemingly very dissatisfied that her all-out attack only left a bloody mark on Assie's arm. Compared to several years ago in Shuwang City, this guy seemed to be much stronger. It was a bit inconceivable. Even if he ate tonics every day, he couldn't possibly advance this quickly. After all, when she fought with ACI in Shuwang City, he was like a cripple and was completely suppressed and beaten up by her back then. There was something strange about this guy. However, she also had many fortuitous encounters these past few years, so it didn't mean that ACI couldn't have them too. Big treasure, attack his lower body. At Xiao Mu's command, the golem immediately swept its leg and kicked at Assie's legs. ACI sneered. When he turned his head, he saw that little stoic swiftly dashing over. With a wave of her sleeve, a white mist suddenly pelted his head and face. Not good, the D*MN girl was going to use a malicious move again. ACI hastily covered his mouth and nose and blocked his 5 senses, trying his best not to inhale that white mist. However, what was the meaning of that wound on his arm suddenly feeling so painful? Assie's expression changed, and he rushed to Arba's side with a large stride. He raised his palm, and a copper bangle shot out. Arba's small hand quickly retracted, but she couldn't stop the copper bangle's speed. Just as that copper bangle was about to wrap around her wrist, a peach-colored figure swayed and appeared next to Arba. With a flick of her sleeve, a powerful force shook Assie's hand away. At the same time, that copper bangle was tossed into the air with a ding. Assie's eyes changed. He suddenly tore open the void and summoned, "Qi Yen, come out." The huge black shadow instantly filled the space. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked at the huge shadow that had suddenly appeared in front of him. It had bull horns on its head and a body like a giant python. His expression changed slightly. Ancient python bull? Why would a sacred beast like the ancient python bull appear here? While he was distracted, he heard a whoosh sound. That copper cuff descended from above and abruptly wound around Xiao Mu's slender wrist, trapping her firmly in place at once. "Young master!" the golem Arba roared. Just as he was about to pounce forward, he saw Yas take a misstep and close in on Arba's side. His hand suddenly pressed down on Arba's left shoulder. "Damned girl, you poisoned me again." Yas coughed twice, feeling as if the pain all over his body had multiplied countless times. Not only was the wound on his arm unbearably painful, even the cut on his chest was starting to hurt fiercely. ACI also had a copper bangle on his hand. His other hand moved to Arba's neck and squeezed her slender neck. He sneered. "You're certain that I won't kill you, right? HM? Unfortunately, you're still trapped by my dual-star immortal spirit bangle, aren't you?" Chapter 1449. Assie's lips curled into a cold sneer. Once the dual-star immortal spirit bracelets encircle you, all your strength will be sealed. "How is it? Do you feel terrible without those sharp little claws and fangs?" ACI couldn't help but glance at her smugly. Bam! At such a close distance, the little fellow directly raised her violent little fist and punched him in the eye. Ow! How the F***CK was this possible? Ah! The dual-star immortal spirit bracelets should have already sealed all the mystic energy aura on this D*MN girl. She shouldn't be able to use any strength, so why was her fist still so hard? It was practically like jade and directly smashed his eye until it was swollen. ACI reached out his left hand, and the hand encircled by the copper bracelets forcefully tugged at the little girl's right wrist. He saw Arba staring at him expressionlessly with a stoic little face, but she didn't move at all. She had activated a Vajra talisman and a gravity talisman for herself, so it would be strange if ACI could drag her. Right after that, Arba sent ACI flying with a flying kick. However, their wrists were locked together by the copper bracelets, so if she didn't run after ACI when he flew, her wrists would be pulled until they were close to breaking. The unbearable pain was unbearable. "Undo it!" Darling Chow was furious. Her left fist encircled with the Vajra talisman struck Assie's face like raindrops. "Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!" Hearing the commotion, Ali and Akir, who had rushed over after hearing the news, ran over one after the other. Their eyes widened in horror as they pounced forward to separate the two people. Especially Akir, when she saw Darling Chow squatting next to ACI and forcefully punching his face, she almost went crazy. She hugged Assie's body and pulled him back with all her might. ACI groaned in pain. His hand was about to break from being pulled by this stupid woman. Arbor was in even more unbearable pain. She was anxious, angry, hateful, and angry, and a ruthless glint appeared in her eyes. Her startled swan dagger swiftly flew out and stabbed straight at Akir's neck, communicating with her mind. Akir! Ali cried out in alarm and pulled Akir over. The startled swan dagger brushed past his shoulder, leaving behind a deep bloody gash with a swoosh. It could be seen how fast and cold this dagger was. The young crown princess wanted to take Akir's life directly. What kind of deep hatred is this? How could you be so ruthless to Akir? You vicious woman! Ali was like a lion whose tail had been stepped on, roaring angrily. I want all of you to die! Arbor bellowed angrily. The little stoic's face was ablaze with viciousness, and the substantial killing intent in her eyes instantly shut Ali's mouth. He was extremely alarmed. As it turned out, the little stoic wasn't an expressionless person. When she got angry, she was really quite terrifying. Kill them all! Arbor roared. An extremely thin white snake suddenly burrowed out of the paradise and transformed into a huge python, heading straight for Yas, who was sitting on the ground, to devour him. The gaping mouth caused the Yas siblings to feel fear in their hearts. No, don't! Akir screeched. Sensing that its master's life was in danger, the ancient python bull hastily retracted its tail, abandoning the venerable peach blossom immortal who was tangled with it. It roared angrily and swiftly slithered toward the little white snake. Little Ming Ming, quickly dodge. This ancient python bull had already entered the initial stage of growth, so its strength was naturally much higher than the little white snake that had just entered the holy beast level and was only at the initial stage of infant stage. Chapter 1450. If they fought it head-on, not only would both sides suffer, the little white snake might even lose its life. Even the venerable peach blossom immortal had to be careful when dealing with this ancient python bull, let alone an infant great void netherworld serpent. Fortunately, this ancient python bull had yet to reach the middle stage of its growth stage. Otherwise, even the venerable peach blossom immortal would be in trouble. Compared to humans, sacred beasts' physical bodies and strength were incomparable. Roar! The ancient python bull's roar stunned everyone present. Even Qiuqiu, Qing Wan, and the others who had just run out also stopped in their tracks and looked at it cautiously. Cough cough. ACI half squatted on the ground and pushed the python bull's head away, preventing it from attacking Arbor. I'm fine. Arbor tugged at the bronze bracelet on his wrist. His eyes were red with anger. Suddenly he shouted, "Let go, let go, let go, let go, let go, let go." His voice became louder and louder. Arbor shook the bronze bracelet on his wrist in agitation, as if it was being grabbed by a ghost. He tried to break free with all his might. There were red marks where the bracelet connected to his wrist. On his snow-white hand, it was a ghastly sight. The venerable peach blossom immortal sensed that something was wrong with the little fellow's emotions. He quickly came to her side and grabbed her little hand. Jojo, Jojo, be good. Don't panic. Jojo, there's a way. There's a way. Pfft. Yas simply sat cross-legged behind the python bull and endured the pain all over his body. He coughed twice and couldn't help but laugh out loud. What can I do? Unless our minds are connected, there's no way to undo it. The venerable peach blossom immortal turned his head and shot a cold gaze at ACI. Shut up. He stepped forward and kicked Assie's chest. This kick was so fast that the python bull could not stop it in time. When the kick landed on Assie's chest, he felt his blood churn and blood trickle from the corner of his mouth. Roar! The mountain-sized python bull straightened its body and glared at the venerable peach blossom immortal with its ferocious eyes. Disgusting! 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 Arbor's small face scrunched up. His eyes were red as he shook his wrist. Seeing that there was no way to take that thing away from her wrist, her expression turned serious. She suddenly recalled the startled swan dagger and cut it off her wrist. However, a spiritual item like the startled swan dagger had already gained sentience. How could it bear to cut off its young master's wrist? The dagger was about to touch her wrist when it paused. Shocked, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal hurriedly grabbed her right hand, which was wearing the bronze bracelet, and exclaimed, "No! JoJo's dual-star Immortal Spirit bracelets are no ordinary profound armaments. They can be big or small. Even if you cut off your wrist, they can still fit on your upper arm." On the other hand, Yas, who was sitting on the ground with his wrist raised high, looked at the fierce and decisive little girl in front of him with a sour feeling in his heart. Just now, she actually wanted to break her own wrist without hesitation, just because she didn't want to be tied to him. Why was there a sharp pain in his heart? Where did this uncomfortable feeling come from? Did she hate him so much so that she was willing to harm herself just to leave him? Arbor screamed uncontrollably. At this moment, there was no one in front of her, ACI, Akir, or Ali. She only saw herself tied to a stone bed, her hands and feet firmly bound to the stone bracelets. Chapter 1451. She only saw Fan Choha smiling gently at her. He raised the tool in his hand, cut open her body, and rummaged through her dantian for something. Arbor, who had lost control, stared straight ahead in horror. The person sitting there was no longer Yas. In Arbor's eyes, ACI was Fan Choha, Akir was also Fan Choha, and Ali was still Fan Choha. Many Fan Choha were grinning maliciously at her in front of her. She frantically swung the bronze bracelet on her wrist and screamed, Fan Choha, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, Fan Choha. Jojo. Emo Lien, who had heard the news, couldn't believe what he was seeing. When he left the bedchamber in the morning, his baby was still fine. She was sleeping quietly and adorably while hugging the blanket. What was going on now? It was as if she had suddenly contracted bipolar disorder. She was mutilating her arms uncontrollably. If the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal hadn't grabbed her and firmly held her trembling hands, the little fellow might have fractured her arms. Jojo. Emo Lien hurriedly rushed over and hugged her in his arms. He hurriedly comforted her. Jojo, it's okay, it's okay. Jojo, look at me. Jojo, I'm Lien. Jojo. Arbor's eyes were as deep as a vast expanse of smoke. They were so dark that it was as if she had fallen into an abyss. Emo Lien didn't say anything. He still hugged Arbor with one hand and raised a ball of purple flames with the other. He threw it directly at ACI. Whoosh! The rising purple flames condensed into a ball and pounced straight at Assie's head. What this attack wanted was his wretched life. Big brother! Ali screamed. Without waiting for him to step forward and protect him with his life, the mountain-like boa lifted its head. Roar! The python bull swallowed the purple flame in one gulp. Then, its expression changed again and again. It roared a few times before opening its mouth and spitting out the flame. However, this ball of flame was no longer purple. Instead, it was suffused with traces of gold. With a pa sound, it landed at Emo Lien's feet and melted a bluestone brick on the ground. Ancient python bull. Emo Lien sneered and looked up at Yas. Did you bully my Jojo with this animal? Bah! Who's bullying who? You'd better figure it out. Yas laughed instead of getting angry. At this moment, Arbor, who had been quiet for a while, began to fling his wrists as if he had gone crazy. His eyes trembled slightly as he muttered to himself, Don't tie me up, I'm going to kill you. Jojo. Emo Lien reached out and grasped his wrists tightly. She stared at the large red marks on his wrists, and a trace of heartache flitted across his eyes. Jojo, don't be afraid. We'll definitely find a way to undo this, Jojo. Emo Lien impatiently comforted the little fellow in her arms. A black flame quietly lit up on her fingertips. A sudden clap of thunder flashed across the horizon. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's eyelids twitched slightly. He hurriedly reached out and pressed down on Emo Lien's restless hand. Don't be rash. Don't attract the heavenly Tao. Besides, burning this fellow to death is even more troublesome now. It's even more impossible to remove the twin-star immortal spirit bracelets. I feel that what Jojo hates the most is not being tied up with this fellow, but the bracelets on his wrist. Chapter 1452. Was that really the case? The dejected Assie's ears twitched involuntarily when he heard the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's words. He suddenly looked up at them. However, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and Emolien were not looking at him. Instead, they were staring at the copper bangles on their hands. The copper bangles looked very ordinary. Between the two copper bangles was a copper rope that was not too long. However, this pair of seemingly ordinary copper bangles was actually a spirit weapon. Emolien frowned as she pondered over a solution. Does the little fellow still have some inner demons? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal asked as he looked at Prince Emo thoughtfully. If that's the case, it's not good. If the inner demons are allowed to grow to a certain stage, it will greatly affect the speed of her cultivation in the future. It might even affect the refinement of her mental state. Emolien was silent for a moment before she said coldly, "No. Forget it if you don't want to talk about it." The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal turned to look at Arbor. Take her back first. However, when Emolien picked up Arbor and saw the burden beside her, she wanted nothing more than to burn this person to ashes with her sacred fire. The group returned to the Eastern Palace in silence. Everyone in the palace knew about the huge commotion that had happened just now. After setting Xiao Mu down on the brocade divan, Emolien hastily covered her wrists with a blanket to prevent her from staring. Assie's entire body was in pain. The little fellow had poisoned him with a poison that infinitely increased the pain in his nerves. Although he had a poison-repelling fruit in his body that could cure hundreds of poisons, this neurotoxin was not ordinary. Even if he wanted to neutralize it, it would take time. The process was excruciating and painful, but ACI did not make a sound. Only cold sweat kept breaking out on his head. The python ox, which had shrunk to the size of a chirp, knew that its master was in a bad situation. It circled around Assie's feet with a gloomy expression. ACI endured the pain all over his body. Just as he was about to sit down on the couch, Missouri Lien, who could not bear it any longer, kicked him, causing him to fall to the ground. "Ayo!" The python ox roared angrily. The copper rope wasn't long to begin with, so Arbor's little hand moved slightly. Seeing that he was about to pull on her wrist again, Emolien hurriedly dragged ACI a little closer. ACI felt like he was a tool that was being dragged around by that damned man. "Jojo, don't be afraid. If worst comes to worst, I'll just reforge this spiritual weapon. Inject a trace of your aura into it and let it become your spiritual tool. That way, you will definitely be able to unlock it." Emolien pondered for a moment and felt that this was the fastest and most convenient way to unlock it. Arbor stared at the beam above his head with a pair of clear black and white eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. It was just that his silence made everyone feel a little stifled in their hearts. It was as if he had suddenly lost his vitality, making people feel very uncomfortable. Inner demons must be eliminated. This can't go on. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal couldn't help but say, "Do you know what inner demons are?" He fled to the middle 6 prefectures. Emolien's eyes flickered. "But I think he's not the only one." "What do you mean?" The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal asked, stunned. "You're right. Inner demons must be eliminated. No matter who it was, if they became Jojo's inner demon, only death awaited them. No matter how many people there are, they must all die." Qin Xian suddenly woke up from her dream. Her demonic eyes widened as she stared blankly at the dark night sky outside the window. That dream just now was so terrifying. See you tomorrow. Chapter 1453. In the depths of Qin Xian's eyes, a dim green light flashed. He hurriedly sat up and walked to the window. He pulled out a thin silk robe and looked at the night sky outside the window in a daze. What? It's already dark. Pushing open the door, he had just taken a step out when he saw a figure about his height appear in front of him. The figure flashed past his eyes and then passed by. Dark purple clothes, a tall figure, and that back view, at first glance, was exactly the same as his own figure. What's going on? Could it be the same as last time, that he was still in a dream and had not escaped? Omega Kotoku stared blankly and hurriedly chased after him. Taking a deep breath, Chin Xin followed the person in front of him into an underground dark room. This dark room was divided into several sealed cells along the stone wall. At a glance, it was pitch black and seemed to have no end. When the person in front of him walked past, suddenly, an unkempt face covered in grease appeared at the small window of the iron door. He shouted hoarsely, "Let me out! Let me out!" The person in front of him walked past without looking sideways. Chin Xin's footsteps paused. When he approached the window, he subconsciously looked back. His line of sight met with two broken eyes with their eyeballs dug out. Slightly startled, he hurriedly walked forward. But before he reached the last sealed cell, he saw the figure slowly walking over with something in his arms. Chin Xin stared blankly and stood in the long, dark corridor. As the other person slowly walked closer, he saw his appearance clearly and his heart thumped. Sure enough. It's me. If that's the case, he should still be in a dream. What kind of dream is this? Why can he see it so clearly? It's like he's looking at his past self as a bystander? He saw that when the other him in the dream walked over with someone in his arms, he did not notice his existence at all. When he slowly passed by him, Chin Xin could not help but subconsciously turn his head to take a look. With this look, he was stunned on the spot. What did he see? Although that little face was thin and sallow, and the eyes were sunken and lifeless due to hunger, but that pair of clear black and white eyes, and that skinny and lusterless little face, was clearly Mu Xiaobao himself? No, it was Arba. Why is Arba here? At this moment, Chin Xin's heart seemed to be gripped by something, and she felt extremely uncomfortable. He even wanted to shout out loud, as if that would release the pent-up frustration in his chest. However, the scene in front of him dissipated like water ripples, and he felt dizzy. When he opened his eyes again, the scene in front of him shocked him. My Joe's section break, rumble. The wooden wheelchair was pushed to the shore and stopped. A woman in a light green casual robe with a long skirt that reached the ground touched the unique bun on her head and walked to the beach. She narrowed her eyes and looked at a large cargo ship coming from afar. She chuckled and said, "The ship is here." Arba could only move her little head. The woman was standing against the light. She only felt that the 5-fortune jade hairpin inlaid with large pearls on her head was emitting a dazzling luster under the sun. Then she looked at her own tattered clothes and her dried-up hair drooping sparsely on her head. He was so envious of this beautiful lady. Why did she make her life so terrible? Chapter 1454. Hey, the cargo ship is about to reach the shore. I'll send you up in a moment and let you leave this place as you wish, okay? The woman giggled and turned around to look at her with a gentle and charming gaze. Don't worry, I'll see this through to the end. I'll send an old nanny to take care of your food and lodging in the future. The woman smiled seductively and clapped her hands several times, allowing an old nanny in green with drooping eyebrows to come to her side. As long as you obediently disappear from our Xion's side, I'll promise you anything. I guarantee you won't have to worry about food and clothing in the future. The woman giggled and looked at the cargo ship slowly reaching the shore. She gave the old nanny in green with a look. The old nanny nodded knowingly and pushed Arba's wheelchair toward the ferry. Two boatmen came over to unload the goods. They bowed and bowed in front of the woman for a while before receiving a bulging money bag. They beamed with joy and said, "Young miss, you also know that women have heavy energy. We boatmen are most afraid of inauspiciousness and generally don't like to bring women along. Hey, you guys send him to Sichuan in a good way. You can ask for as much money as you want." After saying that, the woman took out another money pouch and threw it to the boatman. "All right, Miss She, we will definitely send that miss safely to Sichuan." Miss She touched the Rui hairpin on her head and nodded with a smile. She watched as the old nanny in green pushed Arbor onto the ship. When they reached the shore, she exhaled and said faintly, "I hope you never come back, little pet." The wheelchair scraped across the deck. Several crew members winked at each other and their gazes followed Arbor's wheelchair to the deck. Cough, cough, cough. The old nanny in green coughed a few times and stopped after pushing Arbor onto the deck. The cargo ship had already moved. This ship was 2 stories high and the deck alone was very spacious. Gusts of cold wind blew against her body. Arbor was wearing a thin and pockmarked spring garment. Her eyes were empty as she stared blankly at the sparkling surface of the sea. What a beautiful sea! She hadn't seen it for many years. Being able to die in this place is also pretty good, Xiaomu muttered to herself. The green-robed old woman was startled. "What did you say? How did you know?" "Madam, can you please throw me into the center of the sea? This way, my body shouldn't be washed up on the shore again," Arbor said faintly, his face unconsciously showing a trace of relief. "You?" The green-robed old woman couldn't help but be stunned. "You? Since you knew that our second miss tricked you onto the boat to take your life, why didn't you ask for help? Why didn't you beg for mercy? Why are you still willing to board the ship?" "Oh." Arbor uttered a meaningless monosyllabic word and didn't say anything. He closed his eyes as if he was tired and took a deep breath. How long had it been since he breathed in this fresh and slightly salty air? "Aren't you afraid of death?" The green-robed old woman was startled. She didn't know why, but she felt a little uncomfortable. In their China, a 20-year-old girl's life was just beginning. The average lifespan of a person in China could reach more than 200 years, even if they were ordinary trash. This 20-year-old girl in front of her was like a dry well. There was no trace of life in her eyes. Chapter 1455. Apologies. Second miss gave this old servant a death order. The blue-clothed elderly nanny clenched her fist and looked at Arbor with a bit of guilt in her eyes. I can't disobey." Arbor tilted her head and glanced at her. "You should be a servant of the Shi family, right? Although I don't know you, I'm very grateful. Don't hesitate. Come." The blue-clothed elderly nanny's heart inexplicably trembled. She didn't know what to say now. A young lady whose life had yet to blossom actually had such a heavy death wish. A powerful faint golden halo of power emerged from the blue-clothed elderly nanny's fist. It was just that this golden color was closer to a faint yellow and was very faint. Arbor closed her eyes and calmly waited for death to descend. She had finally waited for this day. She finally didn't need to struggle at death's door to survive in this world. She could go see little Six Zheng, Hua Gu, Captain Gao, and the others. How wonderful! The blue-clothed elderly nanny silently apologized in her mind. Her palm swiftly struck out, and it looked like it was about to land on the back of Arbor's head. A streak of purple-red lightning suddenly enveloped this part of the world. It enveloped the entire cargo ship. What? Several boatmen quickly jumped up from the deck of the ship, gazing blankly at the distant sky. They saw a huge dragon rapidly moving and tumbling through the clouds. Enveloped in bursts of purple mist, it sped toward them at lightning speed. Arbor's expression abruptly changed, and she almost immediately urged, "Hurry, hurry and do it." The blue-clothed elderly nanny inwardly complained incessantly. Currently, her entire body was enveloped by an enormous pressure, so how could she still have the strength to do anything? Forget about doing anything. It was extremely difficult for her to even lift a finger right now. She was completely helpless. Whoosh! A purple figure landed on the deck at an astonishing speed. His entire body was emitting traces of chilling anger. Arbor's pupils contracted, and her body unconsciously tensed up in a defensive posture. "All of you must die." The purple-clothed man's cold gaze swept over the green-clothed old nanny and the crew. Suddenly, he flew over with a palm strike, directly sending 3 of the crew members flying, heavily crashing into the ship's mast. The man was like the Grim Reaper. With just a light step, he arrived in front of the other 2 startled crew members. Without waiting for them to kneel down, a pair of hands reached out and grabbed their necks. Like pinching the necks of chicks, with 2 cracking sounds, their necks were crushed at the same time. After he quickly circled around the ship, there were no longer any survivors among the crew. The 2 people on the deck, one standing and one sitting, looked at each other and saw a trace of fear in each other's eyes. However, the old granny in green clothes did not understand. Why was there such panic and fear in this young lady's eyes? Shouldn't she be happy that someone finally came to save her? But her expression actually revealed a deep sense of despair. What was the meaning of this? The old woman knew that her life would end here. Young master. She knew that she could no longer explain anything for herself. That cold hand grabbed her head, and the old woman trembled all over. No, don't search my soul. I'll talk, I'll tell you everything. Young master, The purple-clothed man grabbed the old woman's head and searched through her memories. Then, he suddenly turned his head. Wait. Chapter 1456. He smiled at Arbor instead of getting angry. You want to die? Is that so? He bent down and approached her, reaching out to pinch her chin. His smile was very gentle, but it made Arbor's heart turn cold. Chow, did I say you could leave? I already said that I'll take good care of you in the future. If I don't force you to call me master, what else do you want? The man's eyes surged with emotions as he stared at her in frustration. I won't marry the Sher family's second Mississippi. I've already promised you everything. What else do you want? Don't push your luck. Chow Mu abruptly opened her mouth and bit down hard on his slender finger. The force that burst forth from her teeth seemed to wish for nothing more than to bite his finger off. Roar! Seeing that its master was attacked, the purple heaven thunder dragon swooped down from the sky like a reflex. With a sweep of its tail, it directly pulled Arbor and her wheelchair out of the deck. No! Chin Xion's pupils shrank, and he suddenly sat up from the bed. Wiping the cold sweat off his forehead, he looked at the dark night outside the window. He almost couldn't tell if he was still in a dream or had returned to reality. Damn it! He clenched his fists tightly. Thinking back to the moment when Arbor was pulled out of the ship by Zi Xiao, he seemed to have seen a trace of relief in her eyes. She did it on purpose. She deliberately let Zi Xiao attack her, deliberately seeking death. Why? Why didn't she want to live? Chin Xion's mind was in a mess now. Some memories that were both familiar and unfamiliar to him kept popping up in his mind. They were abrupt and natural, as if they were his memories to begin with. He suddenly jumped off the bed, pushed open the door like a madman, and rushed into the night. He kept running until a faint light seemed to appear in front of him. If this dream wanted him to pick up the fragments of his memories piece by piece, then the memory in front of him should also be a part of his memories. Bam! The door was kicked open, and Chin Xion's expression changed. Didn't you say that you didn't have any improper thoughts about him? But why did he insist on bringing you back? Wouldn't it be fine if you just boarded the ship? Why did you come back? Why did you come back? A good-for-nothing like you, who can't even take care of yourself, what qualifications do you have to follow the young master? Ridiculous. Following the woman's questioning, the sound of a whip pierced through the air and lashed out at the frail little body. There was already a pool of blood on the ground. Arbor was curled up on the ground, waiting for the whip to fall. Why wasn't she dead yet? She was sent flying by the lightning dragon. Even with such a huge force, her body was actually not torn apart. Fan Choha was right. Her body was very strange. Chin Xion rushed over, wanting to reach out and pick up the girl who was like a broken doll. But when his hands passed through the other's shoulders, he realized that he was still in a dream. He stared blankly at the girl who was curled up on the ground like an injured animal. Her eyes were deathly still. However, it was this deathly stillness that deeply burned his heart and even the depths of his soul. "Stop hitting me! Stop hitting him!" Chin Exine subconsciously shouted at the woman holding the whip with all her might. Chapter 1457. Jojo. By the time Emolienne realized that something was wrong, Jojo's body was already very cold to the touch. It was as if his entire body was covered in a layer of ice, and the touch of his skin was bone-chilling. "Don't be afraid, it's okay. Jojo." Emolienne's hand lit up with a wisp of fire spirit, and she injected it into Aba's body to help her stabilize her chaotic breathing. Aba was muttering, "You can't kill me, you can't kill me. Whip, whip. Why does it hurt? If it hurts, why aren't you dead? Why aren't you dead yet? It hurts, whip, ugh." Aba curled herself into a ball, half bent on the brocade couch like a small shrimp. Her delicate brows were deeply furrowed. Emolienne panicked when she heard this. "Jojo, who hit you? Who?" "She seems to have been possessed by a nightmare." The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked disdainfully at the flustered Emolienne. He directly used a knife to land on the back of Aba's neck, causing her to pass out. "You." Emolienne wanted to flare up, but she realized that Jojo had suddenly stopped making a fuss. He no longer uttered those heart-wrenching murmurs. He calmed his heart, and with a flick of his sleeve, swept her wrinkled little face. He used a sleeping drug, causing her to fall into a deep sleep. A pair of sharp phoenix eyes abruptly shot toward ACI, who was sitting on the carpet beside the brocade couch. Assie's heart couldn't help but skip a beat at the murderous intent in that gaze. "No, it's not like that. I really didn't do it on purpose." ACI couldn't help but mutter, "I sigh. I just saw her running all day long. When I wanted to talk to her, she ran away too. I really didn't know that her reaction would be so big. If I knew it would be like this from the start, I definitely wouldn't have done it. Sigh." There was no point in saying all this. Things had already happened. Right now, he regretted it more than anyone else, alright? How could he have known that Xiao Mu's reaction would be so big? After he put that thing on her wrist, she felt like she was suffocating, and her entire person was delirious. What exactly triggered her? Emolienne sent a palm strike over but was stopped by the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. "If you beat him up, you'll drag Jojo down with you. Wait a minute, let's take off the dual-star Immortal Spirit bracelets first." After saying that, he turned to look at Yas and pretended to kick him in the chest. ACI couldn't help but be startled and shrink his neck. "Hurry up and tell me the truth. How do you want to undo it? Two people have to inject their spiritual power at the same time." Yas confessed honestly. But now, Jojo was unconscious. How could he inject spiritual energy into him? What kind of spiritual power? Earth spirit. Yas said listlessly. "I'm at the 9th level of spiritual soil, so the other person has to be at least at the 9th level of spiritual soil. Otherwise, they won't be able to undo the dual-star Immortal Spirit bracelets. When Xiao Xiao wakes up, you will immediately assist her and undo this damn thing." Yas was silent. "Are you deaf? Alright. Stop arguing." The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal hurriedly pushed away Emolienne, who couldn't wait to attack ACI. "I think this fellow should have understood. It's fine. Since there's a way, it can naturally be undone. When Jojo wakes up later, just don't provoke her." ACI couldn't help but want to look at the little person curled up on the brocade couch. Emolienne's figure flashed and blocked his view. "Get away." Chapter 1458. ACI couldn't help but feel a little angry. He lifted the copper bracelet on his wrist and glanced coldly at Emolienne. "For now, Scram." Emolienne couldn't help but feel exasperated. She really wanted to burn this bastard to ashes. This ridiculous man had caused his Jojo to be captured by a nightmare. She must have recalled that annoying nightmare again and been frightened by some of the things in the nightmare. Xiao Mu really did sleep a bit deeply this time. It wasn't until dawn that she showed signs of waking up. When Emolienne saw her little hand move, she hurriedly moved to the side of the brocade couch and looked at her. Jojo. Arbor fluttered her long eyelashes and opened her eyes. For a moment, she looked blankly at Emolienne. Lien. She wanted to raise her hand for a hug, but when she moved her wrist, she heard the frightening sound of the chain clanking. Don't be afraid, Jojo. Don't worry, it's fine now. We've already found a way to undo the Twin Star Immortal Spirit bracelets. Seeing the little girl's expression change slightly and about to turn hostile, Emolienne hurriedly went forward and hugged her, patting her back comfortingly. All right, let's undo the Twin Star Immortal Spirit bracelets now. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal grabbed ACI, who was sitting on the floor, and pulled him to the little girl's side. Arbor glared at him angrily, then turned her head and shrunk into Emolienne's embrace. ACI looked on unhappily. Suddenly, he pulled hard on the copper bracelet on his wrist. What are you doing? Emolienne quickly grabbed the other end to prevent him from pulling hard and hurting Arbor's wrist again. You're asking for a beating, aren't you? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal kicked ACI in exasperation. Don't play tricks. Hurry up and undo it. Even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for your clansmen. ACI looked coldly at the two of them, then turned to look at Arbor. I didn't do it on purpose. What's the point of saying all this now? It doesn't matter if you did it on purpose or not. You scared Jojo. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal rolled his eyes at ACI. All right. Hurry up and undo it. Cut the crap. I didn't do it on purpose. Yas stiffened his neck and glared at Arbor solemnly. Arbor didn't even bother to look back at him. He hid in Emolienne's arms with a displeased expression and didn't say a word. Yas only felt that his heart was suffocating. He wanted to say something else, but when he came into contact with North Prince Mo's cold and ruthless gaze, he couldn't help but be startled. We guarantee that if you continue to speak nonsense, those clansmen that came with you, including your sister-in-law, will all die within my northern Mo's borders today. Heh, are you trying to start a war with the Aikido tribe? So be it. The Crown Prince smiled disdainfully at him. A loser isn't worth mentioning. You lost to me once, so you will lose to me 100 or 1,000 times over. If the Crown Prince became willful, he was an existence that even Northern Mo's great king was afraid of. Esiai shut his mouth and stood up to walk to Arbor's side. He raised his hand. Let's begin. 2 streams of pure wood spirit energy were injected into the copper rings from their respective bodies. With 2 clicks, the copper ring in Arbor's hand instantly sprang open and landed in Emolienne's hand. A cold glint flashed in his eyes, and the spiritual weapon was instantly devoured by the black fire in his hand, turning into a pile of dust. ACI couldn't help but be slightly alarmed. He glanced at Emolienne before turning to Arbor and saying, "Count it as my rashness this time." Fragmented consciousness. Chapter 1459. But you were in the wrong too. If you hadn't run off the moment you saw me, I wouldn't have. Arbor and Emolienne turned to glare at him at the same time. ACI took a deep breath. Okay, it's my fault. To make it up to you, how about this? Don't you need a medicine man? I can be your medicine man. My body is strong anyway. I'm not afraid of you drugging me. Assie's eyes lit up as he suddenly spoke. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked at him as if he was an idiot. Bring it on. ACI closed his eyes and made up his mind. He made up his mind to let Arbor vent his anger. He wouldn't cry out in pain. Arbor couldn't be bothered with this person. He glanced at him from the corner of his eyes, then shrank back into Emolienne's arms. Scram! Emolienne kicked him in annoyance. She carried the little fellow and walked into the inner room. "Hey, hey, stinky girl?" ACI frowned, extremely displeased. Why was she looking at him with disdain when he wanted to be a medicine man? "Big brother." Ollie walked quickly to his side and said angrily, "Big brother, you've been beaten up so badly by them. Are we just going to let this go?" He looked at his big brother's handsome face, which was now bruised and swollen. There was even a bruise on his eye. Ollie was furious but had nowhere to vent it. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal sat on a round-backed chair at the side. He crossed his legs and glanced at him. "What, do you want to continue?" "Master, don't talk to this person." The little python bull swam around Assie's legs and gave the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal a wary look. This person was clearly an immortal supremacy. Why would he appear in the lower star domain? He was different from a sacred beast that had been contracted by its master. It was too strange for an immortal supremacy to appear in such a place. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal sat there calmly and even asked the palace maids to brew a pot of tea for him. A certain immortal supremacy, who was holding a teacup and enjoying himself, chuckled and gave the little python bull a look. "What, are you waiting for me to make you leave?" "Bah!" The little python bull immediately swam around ACI. "Master, master, let's go." This place did not welcome them, so why should they stay and provoke others? Yas hesitated for a moment and glanced at the inner chamber. "Big bro, what are you looking at?" "Let's go." Ollie couldn't help but pull Yas back. "Big brother Yas, since they've already chased us out, why are we still standing here?" Akir asked in a neutral tone. "What do you know?" He hadn't reconciled with the little girl yet. He was worried that if he left like this, the next time they met, the little girl would be even colder to him. "It's all that North Prince Mo's fault. He's such a busybody." No, there was also this celestial venerable in front of him. He was even more annoying. Yas reluctantly walked out of the Eastern Palace's bedchamber. He turned his head to take a look, his expression somewhat irritated. At this time Arbor, who had been carried into the inner room by Emolien, was leaning on him with a sad expression, his little head drooping listlessly. "Jojo." Emolien carefully applied the ointment on the red marks on her wrist. She lowered her head and asked softly, "Are you feeling better? Does it still hurt?" Arbor shook her little head and turned to look at him. "He's sick." Emolien nodded. "That's right. He's very sick." Although Emolien said that, he was deep in thought. Could it be that Yas had not forgotten his Jojo all these years? Just thinking about it gave him a headache. Why did he meet such a fool? Chapter 1460. Jojo. Emolien placed the little fellow on his lap and looked at her seriously. "Were you trapped by a nightmare?" Arbor nodded and reached out to hug his neck. She rubbed against him like a small animal and said pitifully, "Someone whipped me. It hurts." Emolien's eyes flashed with anger. "Who?" Arbor shook her head. "I couldn't see her face clearly. But if I see her again, I'll definitely recognize her." Emolien patted her back twice and carried her to the bed. "Don't think too much. We'll make them pay back what they owe us. You should sleep for a while more." At this moment, the little fellow looked dispirited and especially tired, which made Molien's heart ache immensely. "Jojo, I'll only be at ease if you're fine," Emolien murmured softly as he half laid her down on the bed with him. He reached out to stroke the furry back of her head. "Sleep, I'll watch over you." Arbor tilted her head and laid on top of him. She reached out to hug his waist and snuggled into his arms. "You don't have to go to court today." "No, I'm not going anywhere. I'll stay here and accompany you." Emolien patted her lightly. "All right, don't talk. Be a good girl and go to sleep. We'll talk when you're fully rested." Chiao Mu mumbled a muffled "MHM." She rested her head on his chest and heard his steady and powerful heartbeat. Soon, she drifted off to sleep. Emolien gently held her little hand. He wanted to use the medicine to treat the red marks on her wrist, but when he looked at it, he was stunned. Her little wrist was white and tender and there was no trace of the red marks. TSK, the little fellow's recovery ability was a bit shocking. Even if he had his own medicine, he might not be able to recover so quickly. Crown Prince Mo's thin lips lightly kissed her small, fair wrist before he shifted his body and slid out from under the little fellow's body. He then placed her properly on the bed and covered her small stomach with a thin blanket. Mo Lien flicked his finger and a defensive boundary appeared in the bedroom. He then quickly pushed open the door and left. Take care of this person on the way back. Mo Lien waved his hand indifferently, and the dozen or so hidden figures quickly left. Hui Feng appeared next to the Crown Prince with his head lowered and said softly, Lightning's team knows they didn't protect you well, so they've already returned to Marshall Mountain to receive their punishment. When he thought of Lightning's unlucky brothers, Hui Feng couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Crown Prince Mo's gaze flickered, and he nodded apathetically. Got it. Aoyi and the others. Yes. Aoyi is still reliable, Your Highness. When Hui Feng thought of that big brother he couldn't help but praise him. Humph. The Crown Prince said with dissatisfaction, Have Mei-Ha lead the team and eliminate them. Just tell us what mystic weapons and spirit weapons you need. But what if young Master Assie's group doesn't return so quickly and they might have to stay in our Guanlon city for a while? Hui Feng asked weakly. Then let them live for a few more days, the Crown Prince said with a cold expression. When the time comes, I'll have Little Seven accompany them to deal with that ancient python bull. Leave the rest to Mei Yi and the others. They must not leave a single one alive. Yes. Hui Feng silently lit a candle for ACI in his heart. Good luck to you, young Master ACI. Chapter 1461. Hey, that kid isn't an ordinary person. You'll be in big trouble if you kill them so rashly. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal chuckled as he glanced at Mo Lien with a cup in his hand. You're so long-winded. Umph. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal rolled his eyes. I'm reminding you out of the goodness of my heart. You don't know how to appreciate my kindness. After all, that kid has something like a poison-repelling fruit in his body. You should know very well that there's no such thing in this shabby minor starfield. That young Master ACI should be from the upper 3 continents, right? His identity is probably not simple. I just don't know if he's from the Divine Continent, the Tsong Continent, or the Underworld Continent. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal winked with a smile. By the way, how's my Jojo doing now? Who's your Jojo? How annoying. Mo Lien glared at him fiercely. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked aggrieved. She summoned me. I'm hers, and she's mine. If she's not mine, then whose? You. He couldn't be bothered to say anything more to this scoundrel. The truth was that Jojo was his wife. It was that simple. At the same time, in a dilapidated temple on Shiluo Street, hundreds of masked men in black had gathered here. Master has ordered that the operation will be brought forward. Everyone is to prepare for the operation in 3 days. The middle-aged man under the metal demon mask issued the latest order with a cold expression. Yes. The Rakshasa princess led a group of Rakshasa ghost sect disciples and stood respectfully at the very back. They lowered their heads and didn't dare to make a sound. Everyone, go back and rest for now. Wait for orders. After the man with the metal demon mask finished speaking, he vanished from the dilapidated temple like a wisp of smoke. The Rakshasa princess heaved a sigh of relief. The man's presence was too oppressive. She almost couldn't stand still just now. This was the difference between the great spiritual realm and the ordinary spiritual realm. However, the Rakshasa princess had just heaved a sigh of relief when she suddenly realized that the man with the metal demon mask had appeared beside her. Rakshasa. There was a hint of coldness in his voice, causing the Rakshasa princess to shiver inexplicably and nod repeatedly. If this operation fails again, I think there's no need for you to exist anymore. Princess Luosha's pupils constricted. She nodded and stuttered, I will not disappoint you, Hall Master. A cold light flashed through the eyes under the iron ghost mask. He nodded and said, "Rakshasa, don't disappoint me again." Then, he disappeared from Princess Luosha's side. This time, he had left for real. However, even after he left, Princess Luosha still felt weak all over, unable to muster any strength. It was as if she had been drenched from head to toe by the rain. Her legs were so weak that she couldn't move at all. Hundreds and thousands of men in black disappeared from the ruined temple. Princess Luosha clenched her fists. Last time, the rice distribution incident didn't cause many casualties, which caused her master's plan to fail again. That Prince Mo was truly a troublesome opponent. He could see through her master's plans time and time again. She hoped that everything would go smoothly this time. Speaking of which, why didn't her master take care of such a strong opponent once and for all? This thought flashed through Princess Luosha's mind, but she didn't dare think about it anymore. How would she dare guess her master's thoughts? Chapter 1462. But the Raksha princess simply couldn't figure it out. At the very least, Master's underground village had been destroyed by Prince Mo's men several times in a row. It was impossible for Master not to resent such a great loss. Especially that time in the mystic beast forest. In the end, such a large deployment was easily destroyed by the people Crown Prince Mo sent. Their organization's largest underground base on Seacone Planet was subsequently disbanded. It had to be known that they had used the news of the Phoenix Egg with great difficulty to lure so many people to the mystic beast forest, all for the sake of Master had suffered at the hands of this Prince Mo 2 or 3 times in a row. With Master's personality, it was impossible for her to continue lying low. This time, she would certainly teach the Northern Prince Mo an unforgettable lesson. When she thought of this, the Raksha princess curled her lips into a gorgeous yet callous smile. Pop, pop, pop. Firecrackers rang out as the vassal prince of Nan and Commandery Princess Anne's lively wedding ceremony proceeded rapidly in a strange atmosphere. Commandery Princess Anne was a young lady who had married out of the palace, and she was also the Queen Dowager's adopted granddaughter in name. As a result, her dowry was arranged according to the highest princess-like scale. Logically speaking, this should be a grand wedding. It was only slightly inferior to the Crown Prince's wedding. Not to mention most of the high-ranking officials in the court, even some members of the sex and patrician families also attended this grand wedding out of respect. Yet who knew? At this moment, the people attending the wedding ceremony all felt their scalps tingle. Not to mention the groom's seething malice, what was going on with him, which inexplicably made people feel a bit scared. Also, what was the meaning of this groom, cough, that obvious row of teeth marks on his chin? The funniest thing was that his left eye was swollen and bruised, which made it very awkward. Not only did it affect the vassal prince's looks, but it also made him look a bit more comical. When the vassal prince led Commandery Princess Anne into the vassal prince of Nan's estate while holding the other end of the red silk ribbon, everyone felt a seething killing intent. F***CK, wasn't this a grand wedding? Why did it look like a funeral? There was something wrong with the vassal prince's expression. The crown prince looked as if he had lost his parents. His face was taut and he did not smile from beginning to end. Was it really a good idea to hold a wedding like this? There was also that Commandery Princess Anne, who was reluctantly tugging at the end of the red silk with small steps. She would pause twice after taking a step, causing the vassal prince to continuously turn around to glare at her. Cough, cough. This wedding ceremony was really the strangest one they had seen recently. Ian gripped the end of the red silk tightly as she asked Su-er, who was beside her, in a low voice, "Did the crown prince come over?" "No, I didn't." Su-er was about to cry. What happened the night before was like a nightmare. Her miss had not even entered the house, but she had already become a joke in the entire residence. Now, not to mention vassal Prince Yi, even the vassal king of Nan and the vassal king consort also disliked her very, very much. Lass, you didn't give the letter to Xiao 11Z? Ian grabbed Su-er's arm, her sharp nails nearly digging into her flesh. Su-er whimpered. "Miss, Su, Gave it to you. I gave the letter to Eunuch Shao, 11Z, woo-woo. Then how come His Highness didn't come? Miss, I heard that the Crown Princess got a fright yesterday, so the Crown Prince didn't even attend morning court today. He stayed in the Eastern Palace to accompany the Crown Princess, Su said aggrievedly. Chapter 1463. Impossible! Commandery Princess and simply could not accept this news. He actually didn't even go to morning court for that little tch? She really is a bewitching little vixen. Commandery Princess gripped Suer's arm tightly and stopped walking forward. The red carpet from the patio to the main hall was only 200 steps away, but they had to stop and walk for more than half a cup of tea's time, and they still hadn't finished walking. The vassal prince of Nan tightened his grip on the red sash, causing the veins on the back of his hand to bulge. "Let's go," he shouted. His shout almost scared the guests out of their wits. Cough. There was something wrong with the atmosphere. Commandery Princess and promptly flung the red sash in her hand in a fit of rage. She abruptly lifted the red veil and looked at the vassal prince of Nan frigidly. "Who do you think I am, one of those lowly concubines in your inner court? Yelling and shouting at me. Don't forget my identity." When Princess Anam Wu Hongma saw that this daughter-in-law had no regard for her dignity and actually lifted the veil on her own before the wedding ceremony and criticized her son with disdain, she was instantly infuriated. She walked up with the help of someone and raised her sleeve to slap Commandery Princess En. "You wicked woman! You shameless tch! If it weren't for the great king's decree of marriage, do you think that our vassal prince's estate would still tolerate you as the vassal prince consort with your ruined body? You wouldn't even be able to become a maidservant, let alone a lowly concubine." Commandery Princess En was so angry that her face flushed red, and she kicked Wu Hongma's waist ruthlessly. "You are the ruined old woman. Wasn't it all thanks to her tch son that she became like this? Every time she thought of how her virginity was snatched away by a man who was practically a stranger, and was in so much pain that she wished she was dead." Ah! Wu Hongma didn't expect Commandery Princess En to be so bold and shrewd, daring to kick her mother-in-law as soon as she came up. This was completely inconsistent with her usual image. After En kicked Wu Hongma to the ground, the surrounding people started making a fuss about nothing. Vassal prince consort. King consort. The vassal king of Nan was so angry that his face was flushed red, and his entire body was trembling. After their brainless princess consort's shout just now, everyone was looking at the vassal prince of Nan with sympathetic gazes, sympathizing with the lush greenery above his head. How pitiful! According to Princess Anam's meaning, the great king had appointed a withered woman to be the vassal prince of Nan's official wife? That was a little unkind. However, the great king had always been muddle-headed. He would do whatever he wanted to do. It wasn't the first time that he had randomly played matchmaker. However, among the mandarin ducks that he randomly selected, some were filled with happiness, like the crown princess and the crown prince, while some were in so much pain that they wished they were dead, like the pair in front of him. Cough cough. How should I put it? The great king's success rate was 50/50ths. He wasn't completely muddle-headed. Pah! At this time, the vassal prince of Nan, Cho Fu, who was clenching his fists, couldn't take it anymore and slapped Commandery Princess En's cheek. "Scram back to the palace. I'm going to divorce you." Everyone looked at each other in dismay. At the same time, it couldn't be, right? The wedding ceremony hadn't even King ended yet, alright? They were going to divorce just like that? These two people's actions seemed even more unkind. Would it infuriate the great king? Shut up. At least there was still a rational vassal prince of Nan among this bunch of irrational people. Chapter 1464. This slap stunned Commandery Princess Anne's entire being. A minute later, Commandery Princess Anne clutched her face and lunged forward, baring her fangs and brandishing her claws like a madwoman. She completely disregarded her dignity and pounced over to bite the vassal prince of Nan. Seize her! The old vassal prince of Nan swiftly pointed at Commandery Princess En, and several robust maidservants immediately crawled over and pinned Commandery Princess En down tightly. They then pinned her hands behind her back and shoved her forward. Wu Hongma had just suffered a loss, so when she saw that this shrew had been subdued, she immediately rushed up and slapped her daughter-in-law with both hands. The old vassal prince of Nan glared hatefully at Princess Anam and felt his old face burning painfully. He had been humiliated by this brainless family. Just look at what day it was today that so many court officials were present. If this matter landed in the mouths of those people who were at odds with him, it would become a source of idle laughter. What's more, they might even use this to attack him. It was simply abominable. This marriage was personally decreed by the great king. Even if you two are 1,000 times unwilling, you have to restrain your hatred and carry out the wedding ceremony to the end. The old vassal prince of Nan declared with a sullen face. Afterwards, the newlyweds were tied up and brought into the wedding hall. Everyone looked at each other in bewilderment, simply at a loss for words. Wasn't this just like an old saying? Don't force a cow to drink water. Seeing this newlyweds being pushed to their knees and forced to perform the 3 kowtow ceremony, everyone looked at each other again, feeling that this wedding ceremony was extremely laughable. Once the ceremony was over, the old vassal prince of Nan immediately ordered for En to be tied up and brought back to the bridal chamber. Only the vassal prince of Nan, whose face was bruised and swollen, was left behind. After exchanging a few pleasantries with the guests, he made up an excuse to leave. This wedding banquet was like a funeral banquet. Everyone was distressed and sullen, and after forcing themselves to drink 2 cups, they all made excuses to leave. After all the guests had left, Wu Hongma smashed an exquisite tea set on the spot and cursed indignantly, "Look at what kind of daughter-in-law this is. What sin did I, Wu Hongma, commit to have such a daughter-in-law? No, I want to enter the palace. Come back." The vassal king of Nan's face revealed a bit of viciousness. "What do you want to do by entering the palace? Do you want to find the great king and scold him? Do you still not understand? The great king is clearly trying to make our Chou family the laughingstock of the whole world." The vassal king of Nan clenched his fists and snorted. He purposefully betrothed En to Fu. However, I will also make him understand that the vassal king of Nan's estate isn't that easy to bully. The old vassal king of Nan's eyes revealed a trace of ruthless fury as he tightly clenched his fists. Achoo! The great king, who didn't know that he had been tricked by his son and had infuriated the vassal king of Nan's estate by randomly choosing a marriage. At this moment, he was in the royal garden, accompanying his 16-year-old noble lady Ying to recite poems, compose couplets, and admire the flowers. Qiao Mu rubbed her eyes. When she woke up, she looked up slightly and met Crown Prince Mo's phoenix eyes, which were staring at her unwaveringly from up close. She quickly moved her small hands and tried to crawl up. The Crown Prince then helped her sit up in passing. "Have you slept enough?" Aber nodded. "Seeing how grinning you are, could it be that you have something good to tell me?" The Crown Prince smiled. "Did you know, En, this scoundrel, has finally married into the vassal king of Nan's estate?" Chapter 1465. Aba's eyes lit up, and he hooked his finger. "She didn't play any tricks? How could she not play any tricks?" The Crown Prince pursed his lips and said, "She even sent someone to deliver a letter to me yesterday." "Where is the letter?" "Burned it." Aber looked at him in astonishment. "Didn't you see what she said?" "What could she say?" "It didn't matter what she said. She was going to be a dead person soon anyway." Aber glanced at him speechlessly. "Perhaps she wanted to tell you some secrets." "Secrets? Then let her bring it underground and tell it to the King of Hell." The Crown Prince glanced at the little fellow in amusement. "What lousy secrets could she have?" "Don't worry." Aber also thought that this was true. Ian was merely a girl raised in a boudoir. Even if she had some secrets, it probably didn't mean much to them. She kicked her short legs, and Prince Amo helped her up with a grin. There are still about 20 days before the Heaven Ascension stairway opens. Jojo, you should stay in the cultivation ground and cultivate properly for the next few days. Don't wander around, HM? Arbor looked at him suspiciously. Is something special about to happen? What's so special about it? The Crown Prince stood up with a grin and walked to her side to hold her small hand. It's just that there have been too many mundane matters recently. Look at you, you've even fallen behind in your cultivation. Isn't that bad? It is bad. Arbor nodded. Your Highness. Xiao 11Z jogged in submissively and reported with a salute. Your Highness, Her Majesty the Queen has sent a verbal edict. She has invited a group of noble ladies from other kingdoms to June Mountain's Yeting Court to admire the lotus flowers the day after tomorrow. She has invited the Crown Princess to accompany her. Emolien, what was going on? He had just instructed the little fellow to behave and stay at home, yet his mother had jumped out to mess things up again. Not going, not going. The Crown Prince waved his hand impatiently and said, Go and report to Muhu. Tell her that the Crown Princess hasn't been in good spirits these past 2 days and needs to recuperate. Arbor blinked but didn't say anything. Since she was married, she had to follow her husband's wishes. Seeing Hai Tang come in with a bowl of porridge and a few dishes, Arbor sat down and started eating. Yesterday, he had been busy for most of the night and hadn't eaten much. Now that he smelled the fragrance of the porridge, he was really hungry. Arbor was eating at the side with a spoon when he heard Xiao 11Z say bitterly, That won't do, Your Highness. Her Majesty the Queen has already specified for the Crown Princess to accompany her. If we go back to Her Majesty now, wouldn't it be a little inappropriate? Xiao 11Z cautiously consoled his capricious master. From time to time, he would glance at Arbor with his little eyes. Crown Princess, say something. Arbor looked down at himself in astonishment, then continued to eat the porridge with the spoon. What could she say? She didn't want to go anyway, so it was just nice that her husband was blocking her. Who had the time to admire flowers with a bunch of orioles and swallows? She might as well stay at home and cultivate. Xiao 11Z panicked when he saw this, and he stammered, Your Highness, Crown Prince Consort, when Her Majesty the Queen sent a messenger, she even emphasized that the Crown Prince Consort must accompany them. Emolien frowned and walked outside. I'll go talk to Muhu. Forget it, Arbor pursed his lips and said. If you go talk to her, she'll misunderstand and think that I'm instigating you behind her back again. So be it, she wasn't afraid of anyone. Chapter 1466. Can you tell me now if something has happened? After Xiao 11Z left, Arbor looked towards Emolien with a spoon in her mouth. Emolien helplessly flicked her small forehead. What's the point of being so smart? He sat down beside her. I suspect that organization will make a move again in the near future. Arbor's expression turned solemn, and she put down the spoon in her hand. Right now, they're hiding in the dark, while we're out in the open. We have no idea when they're going to make a move or how they're going to make a move. Emolien nodded. If they want to make a move, your mother's trip to Mount June's Yiting Court this time has provided them with a very good opportunity. Emolien nodded again. This little fellow understood immediately, so he didn't need to waste his breath explaining. It's not a good idea if we keep hiding. Arbor stood up and said, Why don't we beat them at their own game and take the initiative to attack? Emolien sighed softly. He had originally wanted to take the initiative to attack, but the prerequisite was that this little fellow had to stay in the Eastern Palace and not go anywhere, so that he didn't have any worries. But now, I'll go talk with Royal Mother and have her cancel this trip. Since he knew there was danger, it wasn't his style to walk in the face of danger. Although Northern Emo Kingdom was powerful enough to look down on the other kingdoms, but if the noble ladies of the other kingdoms were all implicated by the mysterious organization during this trip to Mount June and innocently lost their lives, then it wouldn't be easy for Northern Mo's great king and the kings of the other kingdoms to account for it. Arba grabbed his hand and shook her head. The queen must have already passed down the verbal order to everyone. It wouldn't be good to go back on our word now. Send more people to follow us. Arba's eyes flashed. She swiped her left hand across the air and drew out a blue ebony storage talisman. Don't worry. If there's an emergency, I'll knock out all those orioles and swallows and throw them here. Emolienne glanced curiously at the talisman in her hand. This storage talisman can store people now? Okay. Arba was rather pleased with himself. He raised his small head and said, Ever since I became a yellow-level Great Talisman Master, my storage talisman has also risen to a new level. Currently, a single yellow-grade ebony-blue talisman had a storage space of 50 cubic meters. You can even store living things. Emolienne pulled her into his arms and kissed her hard. He praised, My JoJo is amazing. Arba took out several upgraded storage talismans and stuffed them into Emolienne's hands. I'll help you store your things. You can rest assured now. If there's any danger, I'll put them all in the talisman. Then, I'll hide in Paradise Planet. Who can do anything to me? Although what she said sounded very safe, Emolienne still felt a little scared. She didn't want her to lure the snake out of its hole and put herself in danger. Jojo. Don't worry. Arba raised her small head and cupped his handsome face. She suddenly smacked her lips against his. Lure them out. It'll be best if we can catch them all in one fell swoop. Arba shook his small head. He increasingly felt that this method was excellent. Prepare well in secret. Once we're surrounded, bring Situ-E, Duan-Yu, and the others over to save us. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we coordinate from the inside and outside? Our dear Emolienne didn't know whether it was wonderful or not. He only knew that his wife kissed him. He kissed him. Chapter 1467. Arba still hadn't realized what was going on when he saw this fool's dazed expression. She poked his handsome face. What are you doing? Emolienne cupped her small cheeks with one hand and kissed her small mouth with a squeak. Wife, you kissed me just now, kissed me again. Here. She wouldn't have felt anything if he hadn't said it, but the moment this fellow said it, the little girl's entire face turned red. What was going on? Wasn't it just because this fellow casually mentioned it? She felt a bit flustered and short of breath, as if she had a guilty conscience. Especially when he leaned over, looking like he was asking for a kiss. So what if she kissed him? Humph. If she wanted to kiss him, she would kiss him. In any case, he was hers, so she would kiss him. Humph. Smack. She gave him another peck on the face. She reached out her small hand and subconsciously fanned herself in front of him. Strange. Her face felt so hot. Arba picked up the spoon and continued to drink the porridge in all seriousness. He tried to find a topic to talk about. Today's porridge is pretty good. Really? Prince Emo blinked and leaned close to her with a grin. As long as you like it, wife. In the future, husband will cook it for you every day. How about it? Arba. One day later, Northern Mo's queen and crown princess led a group of concubines, princesses, and commandery princesses to June Mountain's Yeting court to entertain the noble ladies of other kingdoms. When the sky brightened, everyone arrived at the appointed location and met in front of Huazhong Gate. Huazhong Gate's main hall had a wide staircase that stretched up to 100 steps. At this time, many carriages and horses had already gathered at the bottom of the staircase. The noble ladies sat in the carriages, their faces red as they looked at the handsome young men across from them through the curtains. Today, the male guests would follow the great king and the crown prince to West Mountain to hunt, while the female guests would accompany Her Majesty the Queen to Yeting Court to tour the lake and admire lotus flowers. Northern Emo Kingdom hadn't been so lively in a long time, so everyone was in a very good mood. Some of the girls who were on good terms with them had already gathered together and were chattering about the gentleman across from them. At this moment, a group of officials and sons of aristocratic families were also gathered together. However, they were not as bored as the noble ladies. They were gathered together and enthusiastically discussing the prizes of today's West Mountain hunting competition. The great king took out 3 profound armaments as the prize. "Haha, young Master Su, I'll have to compete with you in today's hunt." "Same here, same here. Let's just rely on our own abilities." "But I say, it's useless for you to fight here." A young master winked at a certain place. Everyone turned to look and saw Northern Wei's Third Highness, Wei Nanfeng, Southern Bailey's Second Highness, Bailey Shi, standing together with the Duan family's 4th young master, Duan Yu, and Heavenly Dao Sect's young sect master, Situ Yi. From afar, they saw the Qin Estate's Grand Duke Ziqin Xian walking over with the 2 handsome young masters of the Dou clan and 6th young master Zheng's group. When they saw this, they immediately felt that it was hopeless. With so many powerful opponents here, their hunting trip in the West Mountain was most likely to be a mere accompaniment. Sigh. Why was it so vexing? These powerful young masters must have made an appointment to come here together. "The great king and Her Majesty the Queen have arrived," someone called out, and everyone looked up in awe. On the long steps, the great king and the crown prince led several princes and heir apparent down the steps. On the other side, Her Majesty the Queen was also walking down the steps with the support of the Green Mammy. Behind her were Consort Cheng, Lu Fei, and a large group of womenfolk. Chapter 1468. The young crown prince consort looked as if she hadn't woken up yet as she followed them from a distance with her head drooped. Hai Tang followed beside her, wanting to reach out to support her from time to time. To tell the truth, she had originally thought that they would be setting out at noon. Who knew that Her Majesty the Queen would be in such a hurry, having everyone gather at the crack of dawn? Xiao Mu inwardly yawned and sleepily raised her eyes. The moment she raised her eyes, he saw Ian glaring at him with animosity. She was crazy. The young crown princess glared back, not to be outdone. This female scoundrel kept trying to seduce her husband. Humph, she would teach her a good lesson later. She would let this female scoundrel know why flowers were so red. She had to find a secluded place and teach her a good lesson. Looking at the sneaky foot that had appeared in front of her, the young crown princess directly stomped on it forcefully without a change in her expression. Only a gotcha sound was heard, accompanied by a blood-curdling scream. The group of young masters and noble ladies at the bottom of the stairs all turned around and looked up at a certain woman who was rolling down the stairs. Over 100 steps of stairs. This woman was truly in a sorry state as she rolled down. She had rolled all the way to the bottom and had almost bumped into a certain young master's thigh. Fortunately, that young master had dodged in time, evading her with a sidestep. As a result, that woman didn't manage to stop in time after rolling down, and she crashed into the carriage's wheel with a bang before coming to a stop. That horse was so startled that it raised its hooves and neighed. Just as that horse's hooves were about to land and break the woman's neck, Duan Yu flicked his sleeve, and a pebble hit that horse's leg with a whoosh. The horse flipped over in pain and fell heavily to the ground, lying side by side with that unlucky woman. The woman and horse neighed continuously. Crown Prince Mo raised his phoenix eyes and glanced at her in amusement. Empress Zhao creased her brows as she quickly walked down the stairs with a group of royal concubines to the side of the carriage. Looking at that woman who was hugging her leg and rolling on the ground while wailing in a cold sweat, she couldn't help but frown. What's going on? Sister. The Marquis of Placation's Estate's 4th Miss, Su Mingxin, turned pale with fright as she ran forward and hastily reached out to support Su Mingzhu. The woman who had just disgraced herself by rolling down the stairs was the 3rd Miss of the Marquis of Placation's Estate, Su Mingzhu. Su Mingzhu hugged her legs and rolled back and forth on the ground. When she saw Her Majesty the Queen walking over, she hastily rolled in front of her and cried out with a mournful expression, "Your Majesty, please judge clearly, Your Majesty." I beg you to uphold justice for this subject's daughter. Empress Zhao coldly glanced at her. So it's the Marquis of Placation's estate's 3rd Mississippi. How could you be so careless? Someone, go to the Imperial Physician Building and summon a bone-setting expert Imperial physician to take a look at Miss Sue's leg. Su Mingzhu shuddered. She knew that Empress Zhao was warning her not to talk nonsense. But she couldn't accept it. Su Mingzhu hardened her heart and gritted her teeth. She wailed, "Your Highness, Mingzhu wasn't careless. Someone pushed Mingzhu down. Someone wants Mingzhu's life." Empress Zhao couldn't help but fly into a rage. "You better think carefully before you speak." Empress Zhao couldn't quite wipe away the embarrassment that this incident had happened before they even set out. She instantly didn't have a favorable impression of this 3rd Miss of the Marquis of Placation's estate. Unexpectedly, the 3rd Miss was brainless. She didn't see through Empress Zhao's anger and even pointed in a direction as she shouted sternly, "Her, it's her. She pushed me." Chapter 1469. It's her, it's her. She pushed me. Su Mingzhu's eyes revealed a hint of smugness. Everyone turned to look and immediately saw the young crown prince consort looking all around. She then shifted her small feet to dodge to the side. Duan Yu, Situ Yi, and the others involuntarily twitched their mouths. The direction Su Mingzhu's finger was pointing at was precisely the young crown princess's direction. However, that little fellow didn't seem to understand at all and even looked around in confusion. When she saw someone else pointing at her, she even innocently dodged to the side. Her "you're pointing at the wrong person" expression was simply infuriating. Su Mingzhu was furious, and she kowtowed to Empress Zhao while weeping pitifully, "Begging your majesty to uphold justice. It's her, it's the crown princess. The crown princess pushed me." Woo. This subject's lowly words carry little weight. "Begging your majesty to uphold justice for this subject. I didn't push you." The young crown princess wasn't an idiot. How could she not speak up when someone else pointed at her like that? Besides, she naturally wouldn't admit to it since she didn't do it. "You pushed me." How could this subject not know who pushed this subject? Su Mingzhu was inwardly resentful. This crown princess was actually someone who dared to do it but didn't dare to admit it? Wasn't she very fearless? Why was she acting like a coward now? The young crown princess was angry, and a harsh glint flashed across her eyes. "Who has the leisure to push you? You put your leg in front of me yourself, so who am I supposed to step on if not you?" Haitang nodded repeatedly on the side and said with a straight face, "That's right, this servant can testify for the crown princess. This miss doesn't even know how to walk properly and would stretch her leg in front of the crown princess after walking for a while. The crown prince consort is only stepping on her feet." Everyone, Su Mingzhu suddenly wailed and kowtowed repeatedly in front of Empress Zhao. Your Majesty is wise. The crown princess admitted to pushing me. She didn't step on me, she pushed me. Pushed me. Since when did I not walk properly?" Of course, the servant by her side would speak up for her. "Your Highness." Empress Zhao felt a headache coming on. She turned to look at the little crown princess and massaged her aching head. She felt a little regretful. Perhaps he shouldn't have invited the crown princess to attend this event? She still remembered that when she mentioned to the concubines yesterday that they had called the young crown princess to accompany them on this trip to Mount June, everyone looked like they had eaten a fly. Even now, when she thought about it, the memory was still fresh in her mind. Consort Chang, Lu Fei, and other veteran concubines even repeatedly asked her to exempt the crown princess from this exhausting trip to Mount June. Now that she thought about it, the crown prince consort must have done something out of line in the past to intimidate all of them. "What's the fuss about?" Aba's voice was cold as he glared daggers at Su Mingzhu. Those who were familiar with her immediately cursed inwardly. The little fellow was really angry this time. Prince Emo was just about to step forward to comfort his wife when he saw an afterimage glide past him with a whoosh. The crown prince's eyebrows immediately twitched. When everyone looked over, they saw the little crown princess carrying the screaming Su Mingzhu and climbing to the top of the steps in a matter of minutes. A bad premonition slid through everyone's hearts. The great king and Empress Zhao both looked over in shock at the same time, and the corners of their eyes twitched. Sure enough, the crown prince consort stretched out her leg and kicked Su Mingzhu's butt with a kick. Chapter 1470. Su Mingzhu's mouth instantly formed an O shape, but she didn't have time to scream before she rolled headfirst onto the steps. She cut an extremely sorry figure again and even rolled down even more ruthlessly. Everyone was flabbergasted and simply didn't know what to say. Empress Zhao reflexively shifted to the side and stared blankly as Su Mingzhu rolled down the steps. In the end, she even forcefully crashed into the wheel of the same carriage before abruptly coming to a stop. Su Mingzhu was completely stupefied from this fall, and she could only hear her useless fourth sister, Su Mingxin, screaming. Something soft seemed to flow out of her ears, and Su Mingzhu only felt like her head had been forcefully smashed by a large hammer. She was groggy and couldn't hear clearly at all. She had completely fainted, scaring Su Mingxin, who was kneeling on the side, so much so that she almost fainted as well. The crown princess's kick was too ruthless and directly knocked her unconscious. Abba calmly floated down the steps and patted his small hands as he softly said, "Did you all see? As you all can see, this was indeed my kick." Duan Yu raised his fan to block his face. Situ Yi twitched his mouth and rolled his eyes at him. "Don't think that no one can see you snickering just because you're blocking your face with a fan." Everyone. Xiaomi couldn't resist sniggering. She ran up and hooked her arm around Abba's shoulder as she exclaimed, "Sis, I just like your personality. We're truly the same. What we did is what we did, and what we didn't do is what we didn't do. Since someone said that we kicked her down the stairs, then we might as well solidify this reputation of kicking people, ha 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 ha." Everyone looked at Princess Mi speechlessly. "You dunce. Can you stop laughing?" Empress Zhao took a deep breath and inwardly warned herself, don't be angry, the daughter-in-law is our family's daughter-in-law, and our son has acknowledged her. Don't be angry. Ah, so angry. They hadn't King set out yet, but she already made such a scene. How shameless was she? Consort Chang glanced sympathetically at Empress Zhao before hastily stepping forward to help Empress Zhao up. She quietly said, "Your Highness, in my opinion, this third miss of the Marquis of Placation's estate should be sent home to recuperate. Then fourth miss, let her accompany third miss back." What else could he do? Even if he had fainted from the fall, he couldn't be carried on the road. Empress Zhao glared at Abba in annoyance. She allowed the green mammy to help her into the carriage and ordered people to send the two young misses of the Marquis of Placation's estate back. Nyang, calm down. Quickly drink some water first." Green mammy hurriedly handed her a cup of tea. Empress Zhao slammed her cup on the table. She was so angry. Along the way, Consort Cheng and the others felt uneasy. Actually, Consort Cheng didn't want to come today. Don't ask her why. Ever since the prayer event at the Honghai Temple's Nimpan Tower, Consort Chang swore that she would never go out with the little crown princess in this lifetime. Going out with the little crown princess was simply too torturous. But this time, it was Her Majesty the Queen who had personally sent out the invitation. Fortunately, the person leading the group was Her Majesty the Queen, so the incident at the Nimpan Tower wouldn't happen again. That time, the young crown prince consort had really tormented their old bones to the point of choking them. Every time she thought about it, Consort Chang couldn't help but shudder. Quickly look. June Mountain's Yiting Court is right in front. Looking at it from afar, the scenery is delightful. It's really beautiful. Xiaomi fussed. See you tomorrow. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.